Welcome to Exposure on Writing in Prison. My name is Kate Meissner. I am the Prison and Justice Writing Program Director at PEN America, and I'm so happy to see you all here at this World Voices Festival event. So, without further ado, I'm very excited to welcome our amazing readers who have stepped in for the writers that can't be here to bring their work to you, and I'm so grateful to all of you for being here.
I can't tell you what the railroad is, but I can tell you why it exists. I used to send my writing out masked as correspondence, articles, essays, and manuscripts that I broke down into tiny letter-sized installments and mailed. I received confiscation notices that read, "Trying to make profit from writing," and third-party communication, whatever that is supposed to mean. But not all the writing was confiscated, and I numbered the missives, so when one or more turned up missing, I could reproduce them. When I won a national award for an exhaustive personal piece I wrote about the experiences of long-term solitary confinement, the prison sent me a confiscation notice that read, "Offenders are not authorized to enter sweepstakes or contests of any type." The notice was, of course, a monition not to write, as well as notification that I couldn't have the award letter nor the check for the nominal prize money that accompanied it. The prison redoubled its efforts to not let my writing out after that, or writing-related correspondence in. I often don't receive confiscation notices now, so I had no idea that Francine Prose read my work on stage in New York City until 2 years after she did it. I didn't know Junot Diaz and rapper Talib Kweli read my work at a public event and released a podcast until more than a year later when a journalist perchance asked me, "Do you know?" I didn't know. My writing was part of a prison diary exhibit at the Anne Frank Center in New York, or that newspapers across the country published writing from the diary until someone transferred into the prison from another state and showed me a newspaper clipping that he had brought with him. When my writing does make it out of the prison and an editor mails it back in published form, I still receive confiscation notices. Most often the notices read, quote, "The writing presents a threat to the safety of the facilities and or inciting language." The most ridiculous notice came in response to an article I wrote about the travails of an autistic prisoner behind the walls. That one read, quote, "Writing portrays staff as unprofessional." The article wasn't about staff at all. And there's the confiscation notice for the book I wrote, which reads, quote, "The way the writing describes staff, it would drive the tensions between staff and offenders up, putting staff and offenders in harm's way," which is really just correctional jargon for, yeah, we are unprofessional. The notices are a system-wide ban, which means any prisoner in the state caught with a copy of my book or a previously restricted article will have time added to his or her sentence or be taken to the hole, including me. It doesn't help that I am unable to acquit myself of the hope that at some point the prison will capitulate and simply allow me to write. Sometimes I talk myself into believing there's still a chance an article or essay I mail will make it out of the prison, even though I know better. I dropped an envelope through the slot atop the steel box bolted into the concrete floor at the cell house entrance 2 days ago. The box looks like what I imagine a mailbox in the free world might look like, but it isn't a free world mailbox. This morning, a guard brought a notice to my cell that the prison confiscated the envelope. The notice reads, quote, "writing an article with no approval from the superintendent." But there is no policy or process for prisoners to ask the superintendent whether or not they can write. The confiscation notice doesn't comport with any express rule barring me from writing. There is none. Yet the notice isn't incidental or isolated vagary of the institution. Neither is it the unsupported caprice of any individual agent's action within the institution. Every piece of writing the prison has confiscated from me prosecutes a fundamental tenet of prison in the U.S., particularly the peculiarly American institution of mass incarceration. That is, the pathological and historically embedded idea that prisoners are not to have control of any facet of the institution, including narration of their own context or experience within it. Understanding why the railroad exists is to know that the strategy of denying people the right to define their context or narrate their experience within an institution has a history in this country that predates incarceration. Railroad isn't a happenstance term, like the covert railway along which slaves and their narratives passed into the free world before us. Laying a network of rails that lead out from behind the walls that enclose mass incarceration violates what the state delineates as law. Consequently, participation in the railroad is fraught with danger and makes your existence in prison more harried and precarious than if you were a gang leader, drug dealer, or high-level escape risk. The institution considers you a greater threat, yet criminal intent plays no role. The railroad is merely visceral rejection of the idea that there are no stories behind these walls other than the ones narrated by the state. No, I can't tell you what the railroad is, how its rails are laid, who's involved, or how it works. It may be the only thing about prison I can't, won't write about, because writing about it would compromise its existence, and without it, I wouldn't be able to write. Just know that these words aren't an exception. They didn't enjoy the luxury, privilege, or security of a mailbox in the free world. Prison hasn't yet surrendered. If not for the rails, you wouldn't be reading this.